Good evening. I am 𝗔𝗴𝗿𝗂𝗏, and it is my pleasure to welcome you to another episode of One on One, where we bring to you some of the best minds in Trinidad and Tobago. Tonight, I am indeed very pleased to be kicking off the first part of our series, Agriculture Now and Beyond. And who better to start this discussion series with than the Agricultural Society of Trinidad and Tobago? I would like to welcome you, our viewers who have joined us on Zoom and social media, and also members of the media who will be joining us. As usual, we want to make this session as interactive as possible, and I don't think we will have a problem with that, given that the topic we are discussing is agriculture, which tends to be very passionate indeed for a lot of people. So we encourage you to raise your hand if you want to make a contribution. Also, please feel free to leave comments and questions on the chat. We are very pleased to have with us tonight two esteemed panelists, and I am waiting on Mr. 𝗔𝗴𝗿𝗶𝗰𝘂𝗹𝑚𝑠𝑠, but I will introduce them nonetheless. Mr. 𝗔𝗴𝗿𝗶𝗃𝗃, absolutely no stranger to our platform, is the president of the Agricultural Society of Trinidad and Tobago. And in fact, just a few weeks ago, Darrell would have been with us to give his reactions to the 2024 budget. He will be joining us a little later. Joining us for the first time is Mr. Donnie Rogers, who is very well known in the agricultural sector. He is an agripreneur and consultant, and he is also a director of the Agricultural Society of Trinidad and Tobago. So, Donnie, I want to extend a very warm welcome to you. And I know, from the previous discussions we were having, that we are going to have a very informative and engaging conversation tonight. I know you have a lot of exciting things to share with us. So I would like to kick off the conversation now. And Donnie, as you're new to the audience, not to me, but to our audience, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and your background, and also what do you see are the major challenges in the agricultural sector at the moment?
Okay, so firstly, 𝗔𝗴𝗿𝗂𝗏, good night, and good night to your listeners, and thank you for having me on. I just spoke to the president, and he's on the road, and he will be joining us shortly. My background is very simple. I was into business and academics and stumbled upon agriculture. As I tell people, I'm the accidental farmer. One thing led to the other, and from being a farmer, I became a dairy processor. And my business is Farm Fresh Dairy Products, where we have grown to actually process the entire value chain in cow's milk. So basically, everything that cow's milk can make, we make it locally. Not just make it locally, but we are competitive in price to the importers. In many regards, I am also cheaper than the importers. So you are getting a locally made product at a cheaper price. And because it's freshly made, you get a better quality as well. And that's the business side. I have been involved in this sector from consultancy up to policy levels, because having the business and the academic background and stuff like that is all well and good. But becoming involved in agriculture, I realized that agriculture is the only way to go. It is without, a country without agriculture is one where, you're in some trouble, unless you are so poised where you import everything. But Trinidad was built from agriculture. It would be a sad day to see things left to go down the drain. And as I say that, my discussion tonight is as I mentioned earlier, it's going to be fact and evidence based as to where we were and where we are now and how do we go forward. And in order to go forward, it must be done strategically. It must be done sustainably. So aside from the business and the academic background and stuff like that, I am a true farmer now. and not just a farmer, a dairy processor. And I've moved on now where I'm actually a director with the Agricultural Society, because I think that is where would give me the opportunity to have my qualifications and experience, work for the country. So that's just the short overview on my background.
Okay, I didn't realize I was muted there. So I see joining us now is Mr. 𝗔𝗴𝗿𝗶𝗰𝘂𝗹𝘁, the president of the Agricultural Society of Trinidad and Tobago. 𝗔𝗴𝗿, welcome again. I'm not seeing your camera on, though.
He is probably still driving, and right, he's on.
Right. So I'm at the moment I'm driving, but I'm here.
Okay,
And,
excellent.
I don't think that I would need that much of an introduction because I have been on the program several times.
Right. Yes, and we certainly appreciate you being here again, right?
Sure.
So I will continue with my questioning with Mr. Donnie Rogers, right? So Donnie, you did a very nice little introduction telling us a little bit about your background, right? So I would like now to move on to the question about the current challenges facing the agricultural sector. Like, what would you identify as the, let's say, maybe the top 3 challenges that we have right now in Trinidad and Tobago?
Now, having been in the field as a practitioner now, every sector in any country will need state support. And state support doesn't necessarily have to be financial support. It could be support via policy, right? And that policy is also very wide. Aside from 3 things, I think the one most important thing that the sector is lacking is state support. And when I say state support, let's put it like this. The Ministry of Agriculture has been in receipt of budgetary allocations every year. But when you look at the amount that is given to the ministry, it's really to cover recurrent expenditure. You hardly see funds being allocated for developmental spending. What we have also seen as well over the past few years, we've seen many of the divisions and units, kind of allowed to fall by the wayside. Now, this conversation is not about the ministry or any kind of thing like that. This is simply and respectfully calling a spade, right? Because the facts and the evidence, speak for itself. Now, what I'd like to go on to is, recently I had a read of the 2023 review of the economy. And that's a document and a book that is published by the government. It's not a Donnie Rogers publication. It's not an 𝐴𝑆TT publication. It's a book published by the government. And I'll just go into a few items to lead you to where I'm trying to point to. And I'll look at it comparatively from 2017 to 2022. In root crops, in 2017, we produced 9.6 million kilograms. In 2022, we went down to 4.2 million kilograms, a drop by 56%. In rice, in 2017, we produced 1.6 million kilograms. In 2022, we produced 125,000 kilograms, a decrease of 87.5%. Vegetable production, we were at 24.6 million kilograms. In 2022, we had 20.7 million kilograms, generally about 16%. In dairy milk, locally produced milk from a dairy farm, like what I used to do, or what I do and I process. In 2017, we were at 2.4 million kilograms. Generally, a kilogram is a liter, right? That's what it converts to. In 2022, we went down to 1.4 million kilograms, or generally 1.4 million liters, a drop by 42%. Now, let me just tell you all that what that translates to from a physical perspective. We produce in this country just about 1 liter of fresh milk per person per annum. Understand what that means, right? We have moved to importing most of our milk. And I think when we go to the supermarket, we see numerous brands now. You know, aside from Nestle's, there was Moo, and now we have many other brands in various forms, in liquid and powdered milk and so forth, right? And these are things that we could be doing here. Cocoa, our Trinitario, is the best in the world. Recently, I heard former Minister of Agriculture, 𝗔𝗴𝗿𝗂𝗏 speaking on a program, and he said when he was in Europe, processors there have now resorted to just putting a label, contains 10% or 20% Trinitario. You know, it's owing to the scarcity of this product, and we have the best in the world. And production fell from last year to this year by 90%. 90, you know, and if we think that is bad, the Cocoa and Coffee Board has stopped recording the production of coffee. You know, the values are so small and so minute that they do not record its production. And to anyone listening to those figures, something is wrong there. We have moved in 8 years from a food import bill of just over $4 billion, and we are at $7.3 billion now. And if we were to take that in consideration and the rate at which we are moving, by the next general election, we're going to hit $10 billion. And at that stage, we have to wonder now to ourselves, the recovery from that, is it going to make sense to try to recover? Or are we going to allow the sector just to die and we import everything that we need? Now, there is no reason why we cannot come out from that. The only thing holding that back is the trust by the government to move forward and start to push production. Because there are many ways that farmers and the sector could increase production. But when the farmers are at the stage where, for instance, 𝗔𝗴𝗿𝗂𝗏 in my opinion is uncontrolled. Quite some time ago, I was on the news because I went to my farm one morning and all my animals were gone. You know, all. And when I went to the 𝗔𝗴𝗿𝗂𝗏 unit, nothing happened. You know, absolutely nothing. We hear about even right in Jerningham, and I see we have the president of the Jerningham Junction Farmers Association joining us as well. A stone's throw away from the ministry, farmers getting beaten and robbed right here in Jerningham, you know. So it boils down to support from the state. And as I said, support from the state doesn't necessarily have to do with farmers getting a grant or farmers getting money. It is just with the state doing what they are supposed to do and doing that in a sustainable and a strategic manner.
Donnie, this conversation is already very, very intriguing. So you are basically attributing that decline in agricultural production to a lack of state support. You're telling me this is the real issue.
There will be other contributing factors, But from my experience, those factors would not weigh as heavily as if we take state support as a contributing factor.
Okay, all right. And well, may I ask though, how is the state falling short? What are they doing that is inadequate or maybe even wrong?
So let's take the industry that I am in as a dairy producer and as a dairy processor. We rely on let's take, for example, the artificial insemination process and the artificial breeding unit. That unit, with all the regard to the officers, they are hardworking and they will have their constraints with resources and stuff like that. But the operations of that unit is out of touch with the realities of what the sector requires. So, case in point, an animal comes into heat Friday morning or Friday afternoon. If you don't call by Friday morning, that's it. You can't get them till Monday morning, right? Now, when you miss that opportunity to inseminate your animal, you have to wait 30 days, 28, 30 days again. Now, when you have a herd of 100 or a herd of 50, multiply that 1 month by that and you would see how that racks up. Aside from that, dairy producers used to benefit from forage, which would be obtained from the Monjaloo farms, right, in 𝗔𝗴𝗿𝗂𝗋𝗔. That farm has been starving for resources. And for instance, the last time, I mean, I wouldn't just speak on something and not know about it. The last time I tried to go and get forage there, I got a van load of grass, you know, but it was more suited to small ruminants such as goat and sheep, not for cows, all right? Aside from that, we have to look at the availability of food for animals. NFM is the largest importer. They are the main processors of animal feed locally. And sometimes you have shortages. When you have shortages of feed, that affects the animals, you know, pretty bad. When you have an animal that is lactating, it's very difficult for them to go back up to that productive level once they drop in production. So that's just one subsector I'm discussing there, and I'm kind of pointing out, you know, where we need to get better. Now, as you can see, all these issues are very fixable issues. They are issues that, I mean, obviously, if you leave it alone, you know, it will mothball or snowball, right? And these things are issues that we could fix easily, and it could fix via policy, right? It could fix via simple realignment of the ministry and how they work and how they operate to ensure that certain things happen in a certain way. If we go back on the topic of artificial insemination, the ministry doesn't keep any record of how successful an insemination process was. So there's no idea if the sperm that they imported was good, was bad, what type of animal it lead to, how good the animal was in body condition and stuff like that. So that detail will guide them in the future as to, okay, maybe we need to look at another breed, we need to look at another supplier, those kind of things. But there are no checks and balances in place, you know. If we were to go further, one of my, something I've been calling for a very long time is an agricultural census. And I know Mr. Rampersad will also agree with this because I often say it. Right now, we don't know who is producing what and to what extent or under what conditions. We may have figures, but these figures may be a little bit off. But we cannot answer that question from an empirical perspective, and we cannot be correct about it. And I think before we go forward and we look at prescribing policy, we need to know where we are. Right now, we don't know where we are. And once we know where we are, then we would know where to assign resources. We would know exactly how much resources are needed, and we would know how to apply them.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Rogers. Darrell, if I can bring you into the conversation at this point, and just to get your feedback on what Donnie would have said in the lack of state support leading to decreased agricultural production.
Well, you know, I have been speaking about that for the last couple of years, right? And as I said, it's not intentional, just as Donnie said, intentional against the government of the day, but at the same time, the lack of support and availability of some of the services are decreasing at this point in time. So for example, you heard when the budget was read recently, and they spoke about areas in which agricultural infrastructure was improved. They was only able to list one area in particular. So what happened to all the other agriculture areas in Trinidad and Tobago planting projects? Orange Grove, 𝗔𝗴𝗿𝗂𝗋𝗃, 𝗔𝗴𝗿𝗂𝗃𝗃, Moruga, 𝗔𝗴𝗿𝗂𝗋𝗃 was taking place in all these areas across Trinidad and Tobago. Going on that topic of artificial insemination, the 𝗲𝗎𝗄𝗄 breeding station, right, which was once a very, very utilized facility, has now gone and dropped to a facility that will soon probably be closed, right? And I myself, also being a qualified livestock technician and also an individual who is qualified to be an AI technician as well, it's all about creation of jobs and availability of jobs too. I have never seen that position advertised through the Ministry of Agriculture for an officer, AI officer, AI technician for many, many, many years. One of the few existing officers, Mr. Santuki, who has passed away, was one of those who was trying his best to keep the station up and running for quite some time. But now, seeing that he has passed and nobody's seeking that interest, we have other partners in the sheep and goat industry who you might hear on a daily basis, like myself, in the media and whatnot, fighting for the sheep and goat society or the sheep and goat sector. But at the same time, it seems that sometimes this falls on deaf ears, because some of these issues that we are facing, there are some solutions that could lend a quick fix to some of these issues that are in existence. For example, that of which Mr. Rogers is speaking in terms of AI. We can look at importation of quality semen and all these things at the same time. However, we need to look into probably training the trainers or retraining some of the trainers or the technicians, and based upon availability, because these things, and Mr. Rogers will agree, there's an AMPM rule, right? For those of us who are in the agriculture sector. And if you have an animal that is in need of insemination, that period only lasts for a couple of hours, right? So when you call for the service to be done, sometimes you will have a technician showing up 48 hours after, which by then we have lost the window, which is at the same time just losing money, time, and labor, because we are unable to facilitate the farming community. I fully concur with the agriculture census. Again, we have spoken on that many times as well, because we need to know what are the issues in agriculture, which we know most of the issues. We need to know what are the areas that are most impacted and how we start to categorize these areas and how we deal with it in the different sectors of agriculture at the same time.
I would like to invite the audience, if you do have any questions, or if anyone would like to make a contribution, please raise your hand. And I would also like to welcome to the program the chairman of the 𝗔𝗴𝗿𝗂𝗋𝗃 Talparo Regional Corporation, Councillor Ryan Rampersad. Chairman, it's a pleasure to have you here, and as well as some of the regulars who have joined us, always a pleasure. I think I'm seeing, is it Alderman Cheryl and Pamphile as well with us, right? So let us, as I said, we want to make this this session as interactive as possible. I would like to hear very much some of the comments from the audience pertaining to the matters that we've discussed, right? I want to move along now with a question that is based on the budget. Now, I am hearing that both Mr. Rogers and Mr. Ram-Prasad are saying that there is a lack of state support for the agricultural sector, right? However, in the budget, we saw that the government allocated a further 400 million for agriculture. I think 250 million going towards incentives and 150 million for the development of infrastructure. So I want to get your views in terms of that allocation, the overall allocation, budgetary allocation for the agricultural sector. Was that in fact sufficient? And in terms of some of the policies that were mentioned in the budget, do you think those policies would be enough to revitalize the agricultural sector? So anyone who would like to comment?
Well, firstly, if I could go ahead there. The budget really catered to the needs, right, of the farming community. So at the same time, remember that is based upon availability of funds at the same time. So remember, in a previous year, we heard $600 million for agriculture. And then the year after that followed, we heard $300 million for agriculture. Now we heard $400 million for agriculture. But how many or how much of that money is actually going to be made available or going to be utilized by the Ministry of Agriculture at the same time too? So this time we were specific in saying that 150 million is going to 𝗓𝗄𝗂 agricultural enterprises for infrastructural development and maintenance, right? And then another $250 million for incentive programs and whatnot. The existing farmers that we have right now on board, the registered farmers, are complaining that they are making their claims as opposed to 8 or 9 years ago when the program was in existence. The mean of the program is not in existence because the farmers call and complain on a daily basis that they are making their claims as registered farmers, and it's taking them sometimes months, sometimes 2 years to receive back any assistance coming out of the incentive program at this point in time. Another issue is, and I spoke about it many times, is that we have a big population of farmers that is squatting and cannot access the incentive program. So at the same time, how farmer friendly or how farmer oriented are we as towards the farmers who are in production in Trinidad and Tobago at the same time? Because we need to, and I will always preach this, I know people are probably tired of hearing it, we need to change the criteria, because if we want to drive production, we need to make the assistance that is spoken on platforms available to the farming community of Trinidad and Tobago at the same time.
Darrell, you're saying they are allocating the money in the budget, but you are actually not getting it? Is that what you're saying?
That's correct. So for example, within the Agricultural Society, I can speak for on my end, right, as the chairman and president, we probably just got about between 10 to 15% of our allocation last year. You see, now it's not based upon a quarterly release. They are stating that it is based upon availability of funds. So you may go ahead and approve a particular project, stating that you want to utilize the funds that was allocated to you. And then they indicate to you that you need to make an ad hoc request, and based upon availability of funds, you will be able to carry out the process. So there's some room for excuse on their end that if they don't have the funds available, well, we simply can't carry out the project or the task or the whatever we were asking for.
All right, now Darrell, as I have you speaking, just for the benefit of people who may not have joined a program like this before, can you tell us what is the mission of the Agricultural Society of Trinidad and Tobago, and what are some of your main objectives? I think maybe I would have lost Dara. So perhaps we could hold on that question, right? Now what I'm hearing here, I must admit, I know I've heard it before, but it continues to be pretty disturbing to me, right? And one of the things you would have mentioned, Donnie, is that the food import bill is, could you give me those figures again that you would
The
have
food import bill currently stands at 7.3 billion.
7.3 billion, and it would have moved from 4 billion to that 7.3 billion over a period of
Over probably about 7 or 8 years or so.
7 or 8 years. And your prediction is that the food import bill may go to 10 billion within the
Well, if
next.
it's left as is, and we take in consideration the rate at which it has been increasing at, 10 billion is not too far off. So that's why I'm saying if we take the maths into consideration, you see, we have to keep in mind that I think, was it last budget or budget before, the Minister of Finance put a tax on what he called luxury items, strawberries and those kind of things, right? So if the luxury items and the point about and the point for doing that was to curb the import of it. So if that has worked, then it means that we are importing primary items, such as what I explained when I give the comparative figures of fruits and vegetables and root crops that we are not producing, that are being imported, and that's the only reasonable explanation we can come up with. It is the primary products that we are supposed to be producing that we are not producing that is accounting for an import, that is accounting for a higher import bill. Now, if I were to make one comment on the budget from what Mr. Rampersad has been speaking about, when money is allocated to farmers, the one thing that we don't take in consideration is that for an incentive to be paid, you must be a registered farmer. To be a registered farmer, the first criterion is you must have land tenure. The information that the 𝐴𝑆TT has is that over 65% of the farmers of Trinidad and Tobago do not have proper land tenure. So it is the minority of farmers who can even think about applying for an incentive, right? And even that minority, sometimes they don't get it. So as Mr. Rampersad usually says, we need to revisit the criterion or the requirements that will make someone a registered farmer. And he has even said before, let us base a farmer's badge on actual production as compared to what we are doing now, where we are basing it on land tenure. Because there are many people with land who are not farmers who benefit from the incentive program, right? And aside from that, there's one critical thing that came out from after the budget, although it was announced during the budget, but it has been a topic of discussion over the last couple of weeks, and that is the electricity bills, right? We have heard that the government is trying to promote value addition. Value addition will create the opportunity where production of locally grown items increases, right? Because you don't want to import vegetables to process. If we go to the farmer's market, any farmer's market, you will see there are people who would have cassava that is peeled and frozen. It's nicely packaged. That is value addition, right? Now, for anybody who is involved in food, the processing of food, or the value addition chain, electricity is a major component of it. Now, I will speak for myself. When I looked at the calculator to look at the new bill, my bill is going up by 68%, right? 68%, and that is very significant. What that means to me, and what it would mean to processors who are smaller than I am, is that it would hit their capacity to remain competitive. And like me, I still have to do the maths, but how it's looking at a 68% increase of the major cost towards my operation, it's going to impact significantly. Now, we have to remember that local farmers and local processors already work at a disadvantage because we don't benefit from the economies of scale that the larger countries and the larger manufacturers who export their goods into the country, they would have the economies of scale, right? If we go to a dairy farm in India or in New Zealand, you're talking about thousands of heads of cattle, right? When you look at goat production and sheep production in New Zealand, you are talking about tens of thousands. That is why goat meat could be shipped from New Zealand to here, and it's cheaper than what a farmer could produce locally, right? They really leverage on what we call the economies of scale. So when we have local producers and local farmers and local processors who are remaining competitive, although they are not the beneficiary of an economy of scale, and you apply a 68% increase in their major operational cost, what is that going to do? It's going to run us where we are not competitive anymore.
Okay, well, I am seeing here that there's a comment I would like to read that is on the chat. Mr. Rogers is one of the leading cattle farmers and processes his dairy products. I am resolute in my belief that Mr. Rogers can revolutionize the cattle and dairy industry, but whose pockets will it impact? Who are the importers of Kerrygold powdered milk? The 99% is forced to buy from the other 1%, hence the deliberate suppression of the cattle and dairy industry. I don't know if you'd like to make a comment on that.
Well, okay, so let's, and I'm not here to read up my business, right? But let's talk about how some processors can be competitive. I also buy from dairy farmers as well, right? I buy milk from dairy farmers, and I would pay something a little better than what the guaranteed market of Nestle's will pay a farmer, right? I pay a little bit more because if I'm selling my milk on the open, I would like that same figure, right? So I would pay that to a farmer. So I could offer a farmer a better price for milk, process, and still afford to sell my paneer cheaper than the leading imported brand. Cheaper. And that is the equation that I work with. Now, because we have that, that sharp increase, I may not be as competitive, right? So, and I know there are many other processors who offer that same value to the local market. You know, we see the brands, we see them in the markets and stuff like that. We see them in the farmers market on a Sunday morning or on a Saturday morning. But with this increase now, I know a guy who is doing cassava, and he told me yesterday, he was like, man, it's best I just sell my cassava just so, you know, because now it makes no sense. He has all these freezers, and when he calculated the cost to run these freezers now, his bill went up by at least $2,000 for the month. Well, it's going to go up by at least $2,000 for the month now. And that will just eat into his profits too much, you know, where it's actually raising the question to him, is it worth it? From the academic perspective, we could say, is my return on investment healthy at this stage? Now, remember, we're already working with smaller margins because we have to be competitive to the importers or the imported products who have the economies of scale. We don't have the economies of scale. So our margins are way smaller, you know? So someone who can compete with an imported product is not somebody who is selling a product to make a whole set of money. I mean, you must make money, but it would not be the kind of margins like the importers would make, right? We just do it because we want to create that value. We want to create that sustainability in our sector. If you look at the bottom of my labels, it says buying this product will add value to the creation of sustainability, you know, and that's what it's all about. That is what it's about. But we have to ask ourselves now with this increase, is the return worth it now? Can we still be competitive? And as it stands now, my answer would be, I highly doubt it. But if we have now support from the state in this regard, in other countries, you would see a policy that promotes the use of solar. And not just the use of solar, because we understand the initial capital expenditure of solar is very high. But there's no policies by the government where a dairy farm is usually a large expanse of land, right? Why can't we look at it from a business perspective, and a farmer that produces electricity, whatever you don't produce goes back into the grid and the farmer is paid for it? As in European countries, as in many other countries all over the world. Why can't we have infrastructure like that that could help to offset cost, that could help to, you know, soften that blow? Because there would be people who would be willing to do something like that. I, for one, will be, right? And those things could also help to, you know, as I say, soften the blow and to promote that sort of sustainability in the entire ecosystem.
Okay, I'm just doing a quick time check here. It is 8:43 at the moment, and I really want to open the floor to anyone who has any comments or questions directly for Mr. Rogers, right? I'm seeing Mr. Begg with his hand up. Go ahead, Brian.
Good night, Lisa.
Good night, good night. Good to have you here.
And good night, Donnie.
Good night, sir. How are you?
I am good. I've known Donnie for some time. And I must agree, yes, Donnie has been doing exceptional work in the dairy farming industry, right? And I will say this, that our farmers, I will raise 2 points. I believe it's time that our farmers, it's time to protect your industry. Now you may ask, well, what do I mean by that? It's time to protect your brandings. As you know, Donnie, you have an excellent brand. You named it there. And I do believe, all of that falls with intellectual property. And many of our farmers, when we try to explain this to our farmers, well, I used to be at the intellectual property office. Many of them was like, well, boy, I know into them thing, what I could do for me. But what you don't understand is that intellectual property protects everything with your industry, from name to brand to everything. And that way, you're able to also promote your brand better. And I hope, Donnie, that you hear what I'm saying as well, because that is one piece of law that I practice. And it's time that our farmers start protecting their names and their brands. And when you protect that, you're able to promote your business even better. I'll give you a very good example where in the United States of America, where one of the greatest farms ever was the sunflower seed farms, right? Then you had the Florida orange juice. And how did they brand that? They branded it as that, as orange juice from Florida. And it's one of the #1 selling brands in the world. So that is something I think you all need to look at. I'm willing to assist and help you all with that, right? Further to that, in 2010 to 2017, I was part of the seafood sector. In that I was a part of the Seafood Industry Development Company, where in 2017, I would have been chairman of that state enterprise. And I believe that our seafood farmers have been left out in the cold. I wouldn't even say left out in the sea. And this government has not even looked after our seafood farmers. Wherein which I can boast and say, between the period of 2013 to 2017, 41 farmers was created through the Seafood Industry Development Company, when we did the tilapia initiative, where we were able to create especially young farmers, right? Young farmers, where we got NEDCO involved, we got ADB involved. And as we were able to promote our farmers better, where we had a young man from Ayaro who boasted he was able to get his own vehicle, his first ever vehicle. But the PNM came in 2015, and I say with no apologies, the PNM closed down the SIDC. And now our seafood farmers, once again, there's no one to guide them, to assist them. We have ice plants that is totally unused now or underutilized, and there's no one to guide them. And I'm sorry to say, you have a Minister of Agriculture who is doing nothing to help agriculture, because he didn't come from agriculture, he came from local government. And then you have a minister in the Ministry of Agriculture who I think the country only get to know about him because his credit card got checked at PriceMart. But outside of that, when last have you all heard anything from him? So agriculture has totally been put in the back burner by this government. And I agree with Donnie that the state must invest in agriculture. Agriculture is the new oil and gas. And I think just to finish off with my final point, I think Donnie talked about the issue of land tenure. I agree that land tenure is a major issue to our farmers, but our farmers must also understand that land tenure is an issue, right? Because if we have farmers who, besides having their own properties, but sometimes we have farmers who use other people's land to cultivate. And anybody who tells me no, I ask to tell me that's not true, right? And when we try to get them to understand that land tenure is important, the first thing they say, well, boss, I really don't own here, you know. I had to talk to the owner of the land. And what happens? The owner of the land says, hey, I give you no permission. And what happens there? They can't get it. And within that having the land tenure, they are unable to be properly registered. I don't know if Donnie would agree with me there. Again, I'm not a farmer, but I have dealt with a lot.
No, that's correct. That's very correct.
You know, and I want to commend the 𝐴𝑆TT for the work that they've been doing. I know their president works very hard, right? In fact, I'm supposed to be a member of the 𝐴𝑆TT. I stopped getting mail somewhere. Yeah, I don't know if I have to renew or something. I don't know. But
we will review that.
But Donnie, on the first point, I am telling you all need to start understanding the worth of intellectual property, right? In that, yes, you all will form a business and a company, but besides your name, your brand is what is important, my friend. And that is how your brand is able to promote your farmers and able to promote the farming sector, and the agriculture sector grows from that. That's my little 2 cents in this. Have a good night.
Point well taken. Thank you.
Brian, thank you so much for your contribution there. Now, adding to what Brian said, I am seeing a question here from Alderman Pamphile. I hope I pronounced the name correct. How can the issue of land tenancy be dealt with? What are your suggestions? Donnie, any input?
Well, it's a simple thing, and I might sound like a recurrent decimal point. Comes down to the government and their will to do it. For my farm, I have a letter almost 5 years now from the former Minister of Agriculture that just simply says the leases are before cabinet. That's all, you know. And in 4 or 5 years, cabinet can't decide to grant a lease, you know. So it's based on that. I'm saying it's about government's will to do it. You know, there are farmers who are willing to resurvey their property and stuff like that. Now, when you have large acreages, 20 acres, 50 acres and stuff like that, the cost in that is very heavy. But farmers are willing to do that just to be able to get their lease. Because without that lease, you are limited in what you do, you know. So it boils down again, by virtue of how I explained it by that letter, it boils down to the will of the government just to get it done.
All right, now I'm seeing another question here. What is being done to earn, I guess it's earn Forex? In North America, starting with Florida, there's a great demand for bananas, especially silk fig, mangoes, avocados, pawpaw, hot peppers, etc. Any comments on that? And also, I want to invite, we're looking to close off in a few minutes. So really, if there is anyone with any final comments they would like to make or questions, now is the time. Donnie, the Forex earning question.
The agricultural sector has a distinct capacity to earn Forex. I was at the Caribbean Food and Beverage Expo a few months ago that Southex Events put on. And there was a delegation from Guyana and Suriname, and they expressed their excitement to have products from within CARICOM to come down there, you know. So we have the capacity to produce. We just need to expand on the production of the base raw material. In my case, it's milk. In other cases, to do the processing of vegetables, it will be the actual primary production of vegetables. But once we get that going, agriculture in the product, okay, so if we just fill the gaps that I explained in the first part of my discussion, where we start producing what we are consuming, we could reduce that food import bill of 7.3 billion to maybe 2 billion, and we could start earning Forex from that, because we will have the base raw materials here to process and export. We have the entire of CARICOM. We have from Belize go right back down to Guyana, right? When you go to Guyana, Suriname is right there. So there is the distinct capacity. We have the comparative advantage, not competitive, unfortunately. We have the comparative advantage of being one of the major players in CARICOM, and therefore it's easy to ship. All our goods will be generally tax-free and duty-free. It's easy. We have that advantage we could leverage on. But we need the support of the government to start to create the enabling factors that will help the farmers to move forward, to create the sustainable policies to push that sort of productive levels.
There is a question here. I'm not sure if you'll be able to answer it, but it is from Kasraj. Presently, there's a government program where young people are selected and getting thousands of dollars in land to get involved in agriculture. Can the children of non-registered farmers apply? I don't know, maybe if Brian may have the answer to that.
That is the Youth in Agriculture project, and it's supposed to be open for anyone to apply. Okay. Now, I will say I am all for the development of the youth because they are the second generation or the third generation. However, you are giving the new entrants land tenure, but the actual producers don't have it. So we are still missing the ball. So we're going good on one side, but you're forgetting the actual producers. And that's a recipe for trouble.
Okay, I see, Brian, you have a comment that you would like to make on this issue.
Yeah, well, Donnie is correct with that. That's the Youth in Agriculture project, right? It's open to anyone and everyone, right? The problem we have is that a lot of people don't know about these projects or these programs, right? And then when you're just brought to them, the first thing they is asked is, well, why gain out of that? Right? And then we have another issue, and I'm sure Donnie is very aware of this, is that we have where that Forex issue, where the government does nothing to promote the Forex with our farmers. They do nothing, right? We have quality farmers who can export things, right? And then when we look about the issue of land, where you can have land to use, during the People's Partnership, there was something called the 𝗔𝗴𝗿𝗂𝗍𝗂𝗋 initiative, where in which the Guyanese government and the then government of Trinidad and Tobago came to an agreement to use land in Guyana. I would notice that I was a part of that delegation and I was there in Guyana. When the 𝗔𝗴𝗿𝗶𝗰 administration came in 2015, any of that idea was shut down. It was not looked at. And sadly, had we still have the 𝗔𝗴𝗿𝗂𝗍𝗂𝗋 initiative plan, our agriculture sector could have expanded further. And that was not looked at. And then we were also looking at, and Donnie is a cattle farmer, when we were looking to bring back the 𝗏𝗏 into Trinidad as any form of cattle rearing, any form of dairy, and even for meat. And again, this government came in and removed all of that. And the 𝗏𝗏 was a very good source of protein. That was not looked at. And then when we had the issue of trying to get lands to be used in the western side of Trinidad, right? And we were planning to have lease agreements done with owners of lands for farmers to operate by a lease agreement. Hear what I am saying? Lease agreement by leasehold formats. Again, the Rowley administration came in and that was also destroyed. So who really cared about agriculture? Who didn't care about agriculture? I mean, the government came with this budget and talk about there will be no taxes on this and no taxes on that. Okay, so you're bringing in equipment. You're bringing in, you're bringing in things to do farming. But if the people don't have land to farming, where you going to put the tractor? Hey, Donnie? On the road?
I agree.
Where you going to put it on the sky? Where you going to put it? The drain? And that's what I'm saying. Our farmers must also speak out. Our farmers must share their hands and share their voices. Because that's our cocoa industry. Sorry to hit many points, Alicia. Our cocoa industry is one of the best cocoa in the world. In fact, if not the best. But unfortunately, we have cocoa farmer X, cocoa farmer Y, cocoa farmer Z. And the three of them think that their cocoa is the best. And when we were trying to get everybody involved, the formula was called geographical indication. Again, I'm talking intellectual property. For those who don't know, Jamaica, the Blue Mountain coffee is a geographical indication.
Mm-hmm.
But we must understand, if we are to move forward, we all must move forward hand in hand. It can't be, well, my product is more better than yours. And we have to stop thinking like that. And if we move like that, then we all will do better in the sector. But I am not a farmer. I am a lawyer. But I had a chance of being part of those systems. And I saw how other nations operate with it. And I think it's time we start thinking more forward like that. Anyway, that's all I have to say.
Thank you again, Brian. Now, I know Brian keeps saying he's not a farmer, but I think the average Trinbagonian, I should say, right? Farming has been part of our heritage. I mean, who didn't grow up with their grandparents doing a little gardening, as we used to say, right? So it's something that is very much a part of our existence, of our heritage, of our way of life, right? I do want to read. We are going to wrap up very shortly. So this is the final opportunity for any comments or any questions, but there were some very interesting comments on the chat, and I would just like to share some with our audience. So the Minister of Finance announces figures at the beginning of the financial year, then cuts down those figures in the mid-year review So agencies do not receive what they are promised. And this was a comment that was made while we were discussing that although there are budgetary allocations, those allocations do not necessarily materialize, right? So moving along, our seafood farmers also have been left out of this budget. I know Mr. Bake would have made some comments on that, right? We must demand inclusion where state resources are involved. To Mr. Rogers and Mr. 𝗔𝗴𝗿𝗶𝗰𝘂𝗹𝑚𝑠𝑎𝑑, we seem to have lost Mr. 𝗔𝗴𝗿𝗶𝗃. I want to call on both of you to use your good offices at the 𝐴𝑆TT to call on the Ministry of Agriculture to urgently look into the desilting of irrigation ponds for farmers across the country. At present, reservoirs are below average levels due to a strange rainy season. Thousands of farmers will not be able to produce any food with the turn of the seasons in January. Donnie, do you have any comments on that?
Well, we have been talking to the ministry on that regard. I know Mr. 𝗔𝗴𝗿𝗶𝗃 has been liaising directly with the technical officers. We are seeing some improvement, but generally there are a lot of areas that still need attention, and obviously that's the majority. So we will still keep on doing what we have to do, you know.
Okay.
Good night, everyone.
Good night, Marlon. Go ahead, Mr. Matura.
I'm Marlon Matura, president of the Jdrneham Junction Farmers Association. I represent over 200 farmers. Now, yes, we will talk about land, but to me, the feedback I'm getting from my farmers are the wrong people have land. Meaning we have over 500 plots in my area, currently plots. And to tell you the truth, 100 of those plots, if they were planted in the last 5 years, plenty has been planted. So I don't know if Donnie and Daryl could ask for a redistribution of these lands to farmers who really need it, right? Desilting. I have 5 main channels, and it has hurt me to know they will clean the 𝗔𝗴𝗿𝗂𝗋𝗔 River, and the 5 channels, my 5 channels haven't cleaned. This is next year will be going on 9 years. I must say thank you to Vandana Mohit and Daryl does reach out, and I must say thank you to these guys, but it's going on 9 years and none of these channels have been cleaned. We will talk all this talk with farmers what it have, but to me, who is benefiting? And the wrong set of people is benefiting. There are more issues to be discussed, sorry, but I'm talking to you from the ground, representing over 200 farmers, and I know the cry of the farmer. Thank you.
Thank you for that contribution, Mr. Matura. Donnie, do you have any response to that?
I would say 2 things. One, anytime that 𝗔𝗴𝗿𝗂𝗋𝗃 River floods, there's one farmer inside of there that loses everything that I know of personally, and that's a guy called Pundit. You sometimes see him in newspaper clippings, and we know firsthand that he loses everything. So the threat of total losses is very, very real in that Jdrneham area, and they need I would say the immediate intervention of the engineers and the equipment motor pool of the ministry. On the part of the farmers' lands and how much lands you have there to be redistributed, I think it would be much easier, and you would get quicker benefits if there was a stock of all the owners and their plots, and through the Jerningham Junction Farmers Association, to which they are affiliated to the 𝐴𝑆TT, we could work with you guys to negotiate cultivators agreements. So basically, you have the owner, but you would have somebody who is cultivating the land under a specific agreement. Hopefully, so that will give the land tenure, because you have proof of you are legitimately renting a piece of land or you are operating on a piece of land. And farmers can be legitimized, and farmers can actually now expand from 2 acres to 4 acres or 6 acres or whatever they want to go into. But we could look at cultivators agreements for situations like that, where you have large expanses. You may know the owners, but only a small portion is currently under production. And I think that is a faster approach. You will get better results adopting that sort of approach to it.
I just want to say we will be taking note of some of the issues that are being raised here, and they will be documented and sent to the 𝐴𝑆TT, as well as other organizations who may be able to help with some of these programs. Right? I am seeing a comment here from Mr. Sinanan. There is a lot of state lands in my community where youths are involved in farming. Will those in power to help them? I think it's where those in power to help them get registered. Mr. Sinanan, I am not sure what community you are in though, right? So maybe you can put that on the chat, or if you would like to maybe come on the mic and say something, feel free. Right? All right.
I believe Mr. Sinanan, if it is Mr. Sinanan, I'm thinking about, I believe he is from Maracas and Joseph.
Okay.
I stand to be corrected. From my visits there with the 𝐴𝑆TT, it is, yeah, I'm seeing the comment there, it is. So good night, Byron, I hope all is well. It's a beautiful area. It is an area that is so full of potential. That area can be a pyramid on steroids. Trust me when I say that. That is a sleeping powerhouse, and if the right implements are invested in there, it will create jobs, it will create production, it will create very high levels of production. Just because of the topography and the climate, it is a phenomenal area. It is a sleeping giant, in my opinion. So he's very correct. They need some sort of intervention there. One day, maybe, you could visit up there, Alicia. I could probably make arrangements, and you will see the vast potential that exists in those areas. Literally, it is a sleeping giant.
Okay, all right. So I'm doing a quick time check now. It is 9:09, right? So I think we will look at wrapping up. I do want to ask you one final question, maybe to wrap all of this up. Now, we've heard a lot of problems. What is the solution? What do you propose to be the solution to all of these issues that are being faced in the agricultural sector? And they're issues that seem to have been there now for decades upon decades. And I know we have had similar programs like this to discuss these challenges in the agricultural sector since we started to do this online program. And yet month after month, year after year, you're hearing the same thing. So there doesn't seem to be any progress taking place. So I want to ask Donnie or anybody who would like to maybe chime in, what is the solution?
Well, for me,
I will give one simple answer to that. And what we need is a national strategic agricultural plan that should be implemented. And that plan has to be based on a study of the current playing field, of everything, of all the shortfalls, of where we are, by virtue of the agricultural census and stuff like that. And once we have that empirical data as to where we are, we use that and we construct a national strategic agricultural plan that covers all the subsectors of the sector. And once we could do that, over time, we could apply the proper prescriptions and remedy to all these ills. Because as you realize, these problems are not problems that are debilitating. You know, they are fixable problems. They are small problems that were allowed to foster and become bigger, and they started to affect now the actual production. So I believe, in my opinion, once we have a national strategic agricultural plan that is adhered to, and not just have a plan and put it on a shelf, it must be adhered to and implemented, we will see numerous results coming from that.
Mr. Matura?
As for me, guys, I will say, don't want to sound political, but it's blatantly open. Those who are eyes can see changing government. Because if we had the hot pepper farming, they close it down. Caroni, they close it down. Tilapia, you close it down. The last time 𝗔𝗴𝗿𝗂 ever get anything from any government, and I could say this proud, is under Mr. 𝗓𝗏𝗏. Everybody got claims from the incentive. It had a big flooding, and my farmers will say that as well. Last time the whole country, farmers, registered or unregistered, got anything is under 𝗓𝗏𝗏. So for me, I will say change the government because the policies they are implementing is not working. And the main policy, I believe right now, is to shut down everything, close down everything. So this is what I will say, change the government because we ain't reaching no way. Trust me. So good night, everybody.
Thank you for that, Mr. Matura. I know Gary here wants to make a comment. Gary?
Good evening, everybody. Hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, so I totally agree with the last speaker there in changing the government. At least I think we need to keep beating this issue on social media as much as possible. Maybe once a month, at least bring them on, you know, let's try and get other farmers on board here so that we can make this, educate the population on what's really taking place, why they are in a difficult situation for food, and what's our solution for increasing the productivity and enhancing their ability to access food. You know, so it's pretty obvious the discrimination has been real and blatant and very disrespectful, and it continues. So definitely we do have to make a greater effort on changing the government. This is where the population has to participate and support the farmers, but this is about their survival. They have to understand how critical this situation is in order to, you know, for them to really take a stand. So we definitely need to keep bringing these issues forward to the population and consistently educating them. Thank you.
Okay, Gary.
But
Go ahead.
however, and I listened to the young man, Mr. Matura. Sorry, I never got to meet him when we were in government, right? Yes, Vasant did bring, and this was brought to cabinet via cabinet note. And the Prime Minister then, who was 𝗔𝗴𝗿𝗂𝗏, was one thing she always says, is that farmers will have a place under her government, right? And that is why she ensured when there's this nonsensical statement was being made by certain persons that people were not getting land tenure, ex-colony workers wasn't getting what they were supposed to be getting, which was utter rubbish, which has been totally been debunked by MP 𝗔𝗴𝗿𝗂𝗏. And Mr. Matura is correct that every part of the sector was closed down, right? When the idea was brought back to start back certain industries that came out of the sugar industry, Dr. Rowley scoffed at that idea. And why? Because you plain talk bad manners. Who are the people who are the people that would be ensuring that that work could be done? Where are the districts? Where are those areas? The Caroni district, the 𝗂𝗏 district, the Chaguanas district, the Orange Grove districts. And those areas are support which political party? Let's be real. Let's be real, people. Right? And as long as the people's national movement is in office, they will never care about agriculture. And that is a fact. And it's time we start saying it's time for them to go. Thank you.
Is that Brian?
That is Brian. Yes, that's
Yeah,
correct.
definitely. Brian, thank you, brother. Anyway, listen, it's pretty obvious the discrimination is against people in certain demographic area, right? There's a definite plan of action to suffocate, stifle, and cause as much distress for you, and not assist you because you belong to a certain political party or you live in a certain area. We know that is most definite. So we do have to fight this issue very strong politically. And the more we bring the issues to the population in their face and try to educate them, and we also have to not just educate them, we have to organize the protests. We have to organize our local constituencies and mobilize them with simultaneously educating them on what's taking place. We just can't be just talk. We have to do some kind of course of action. I'm very dissatisfied with the people not rising up and addressing these issues. So we have to do better in organizing them and getting them mobilized to really address this issue. This is about their survival. They have to understand this.
I mean, I sorry, Donnie, to have overshadowed you a bit on this.
No, that's no problem. That's no problem.
I know the 𝐴𝑆TT is not political, and I accept that. But I will remember the men like Norris Deonorine, who fought for the farmers in a way that was when they were National Food Crop Farmers Association. 𝐴𝑆TT, I know you all have been fighting, and I like the fight that you are doing. But we must understand this is the agriculture sector. Agriculture it is the new oil and gas. I repeat myself with that, because there will come a time when our national GDP, which is that of oil and gas, may cease to be. So where do we go at, right? And agriculture is the way to go. And to do that is that we have to understand that it is time for the discrimination to stop against our farmers and our districts of where our farmers operate. And that's a reality. We have farmers right now who have not even received their flooding grants. We have a lot of farmers who were flooded out in 2018. I go to 2018 when the massive national floods. Then we had floods in just 2022. And when they went and they applied for their grants, they are still yet to get it. And Donnie, I'm sure you would agree with me on that. Where we had farmers who came to me, where I'm also operating with the MP for 𝗂𝗏𝗏, and we had to go to the authorities and say, listen, these are farmers. These are registered farmers. And the amount of things these people had to work with. Where we have farmers who are in their 80s, their 70s, elderly people. You're making them come down to Port of Spain. And when you try to help them, you gotta work with ID. You gotta work with this, that, and the other. Where one was even told, we work with our deed. And we were like, well, what nonsense we are hearing? Right? And then in the same budget, and I'm sure Donnie would agree with me here, all of a sudden the government talking about the Mapa farms, which is in 𝗂𝗏𝗏𝗏, right? Mapa farm has under the UNC. And I said, damn it, it was used for grafting, budding, and also to create a lot of fruit rearing crops. But this government came in and Mapa farm became something less than what it is. If you see the road to go to Mapa farm, you will turn back.
Mm-hmm.
And now they want to mention Mapa farms in the budget. It's an insult, it's a disgrace. But when you tell them, come, let's visit the area. Come, see it. Get a book a day. Get a book a time. Get a find when they are available. Rubbish. Total rubbish. But at the end of the day, I mean, I like that our farmers have been speaking out, but we need more from them. And I am saying it again. It is time for the discrimination of our farmers to end, whether it is rural or whether it is geographical. It needs to stop, because we have some predial larceny. Predial larceny is still happening. But if you know, the predial larceny unit has one vehicle, has about 4 or 5 officers. And where is that unit? In Central. One unit. What they should have done, and these recommendations was given, that each police station or each district should have a predial larceny unit. A predial larceny unit. And what happens there? They don't take us on. Because why? Who want to hear about somebody pumpkin patch?
Well, if I may, Mr. Big, let me just add to that. Do you know we only have 1 pound in the country? Hello?
Say that again?
Yeah, we only have 1 pound in the country, not in pound. We only have 1 in the country. And that's, I believe, in Cedros or something like that. So when someone loses animals and the animal is found, there's nowhere, according to law, that is legally recognized to house that animal. You know?
And this is where
Donnie, just adding to the predial larceny. In Junior Junction, quite just recently, we got 5 stolen vehicles in our farming district. The last vehicle, I think it was on social media, where they robbed the family, carry the woman by the bar and drop her back home. That vehicle, the gold tier, was found in my area, right? And I mean, I must say the Cunupia police is we have a good relationship, Mr. T-Lock. We have a good relationship, but
he's good.
It is getting out of hand, and Brian is so correct, right? My father-in-law is a farmer, certified registered farmer, and since 2018, he made a flood claim. 4 acres of sweet potato, over $50,000 to bring this crop, 4 acres. When we went to register the crop, we registered it and stuff. When the officers came, they said, "Me ain't see no flood, no." How could you come a week after to do a site visit? What are you going to see there? When we spoke up against it, we never collect any claim from that office there. When I went, I asked the A1, I said, "What's going on?" He said, "Nah, your father-in-law doesn't get trouble." I said, "My father-in-law don't get no trouble. He just talk up for the right thing, and you all don't like that." They sent an officer in the back by me. He said, "Malan, I gotta stop coming here." "Why?" He said, "But it's only 10 of your farmers registered. Out of 200 farmers, 10 registered. So he stopped coming here. But when NAMDEFCO need any information, they come in by us. When they want to bring the class, Ministry of Agriculture Extension Office want to bring the class to do anything in the back there, straight there they come in. So you recognize us as farmers there, but when they do claims, you don't recognize us as farmers. And this stupidness have to stop. From the head go right down. The agriculture, Ministry of Agriculture is in a total mess. I telling you, God help us here right now. So we could talk from now till thy kingdom come. As I say, change the government.
You see, Marlon, you hit a point on the head, and I'm sure Donnie would agree with me. And to use from Donnie's own sector, we could talk until the cows come home.
Yeah, but we have to, guys, listen to me. We could talk, yes, but we have to rise up. We really have to mobilize. We have to go and meet these people. I know I think there's a lot of people afraid of victimization, which the government will go all the way out to victimize.
Well, I know the last time the ASTT spoke up against the predial larceny, and Donnie, I stand to be corrected. I know the vehicle was impounded.
That is correct. After the president raised my issue nationally, that resulted in, shortly thereafter, the vehicle of the 𝐴𝑆𝑇𝑇 was grounded,
Ole can't blame Dave, understand?
Repeat that. The vehicle was grounded.
Yeah. I know the president received communication to return the vehicle to the head office, and those instructions were given without any reason.
Donnie, I find that is so unfortunate. I hope that has changed. Let me tell you something, my friend.
No, the vehicle is still down.
When there was a change in government in 2015, I was still chairman of the SIDC, right? And I got a call from the chief executive officer then, telling me, there's a change in government, and they expect certain things from me. I said, who expect what from me? And the permanent secretary even told me that I am operating so unconscionable. I told the PS, I say, is a PS or a politician? Which one? Right? And I say, if they want to move me, remove me. I said, they want me gone, remove me. I said, the minister has the power to remove me. They didn't do it. And what they did, they withheld my stipends. Right? They caused members of the board to resign because they say, changing government, there we go. I tell them I'm not going. And I wrote the then minister, well, actually, no, he's still Minister of Finance, sorry, Mr. 𝗂𝗏𝗿𝗂𝗋𝗿, because he was corporate sole head as Minister of Finance. And I had to remind him that I am the duly appointed chairman of the SIDC. I expect to be paid. And I even threatened him. I said, I was here to inform you. I am not no normal man on the clapper bus. I am a practicing attorney at law. And I threatened him with a reaction letter. Boom, shut, I get paid. Right? When Clarence Rambarat refused to meet with me, I wrote his boss, Dr. 𝗔𝗴𝗄𝗏𝗏𝗂𝗏𝗔. And Rowley said I had to meet with him. So, Donnie, take a little cue there. Maybe you only need to write the Minister of Agriculture's boss.
Okay, guys.
We have to mobilize. We have to mobilize.
Well,
I agree with Brian. You guys need to link up with Brian, and we need to fire things up. I mean, I don't have the tolerance to tolerate what I'm hearing here. And we know it existing. It's just that we need to bring more and more people forward, and I think I always say strength is unity. That's a fact. And the more we mobilize, the more we come together, is the greater our force will be. You see what's happening here in the US with the Palestinian issue. They were surprised to see the amount of American people coming out and mobilizing that are non-related to Palestinian people, joining them in force. So take an example of that. Let's come together and mobilize from all angles and address them, show them a force.
We need more programs like this. This program, we need more like this.
I would just like to make one final point before Alicia close off. Brian, to add to a point that you were making there about the floods, the only relief the farmers got from the floods from 2021 to 2022, because some farmers were hit with 3 washouts back to back. All right, 3 washouts back to back. The only tangible relief that farmers got was through the 𝐴𝑆𝑇𝑇. At that point, Mr. 𝗙𝗏𝗿𝗄𝗏 came up with a plan to bring real value to these farmers. So you know what he did? He went and begged. I know the ministry put some money into it. I can't discount that. He went to all these chemical companies and stuff like that. And I believe the 𝐴𝑆𝑇𝑇 shared out over 40,000 seedlings. And I would think about maybe about 300 to 400 huge hampers, which generally had all the fertilizers and chemicals that you need to start back planting.
But Donnie,
and that went out to hundreds of farmers.
I just to quickly ask you, aren't you governed by legislation?
Yes, true. Yeah, correct.
Yeah, you
We
all
are
are an
under
act of parliament.
the Municipal Act. Yes. Sorry, what's that?
You all are an act of parliament. And
Yes,
what
we
you
are.
all should do is review your act and see in fact if they've taken your vehicle, see if they've acted ultra virus of your act. Right? I mean, I don't know if you all have lawyers on your board. I have no idea. Right? But you all need to see that. I mean, that's free legal advice there.
All right,
I
guys.
hear you, sir.
It is now 9:30, 31 in fact. We tend to do a hard stop at 9:30, right? This was, I think we met our objective certainly in generating the sort of discussion we were hoping to generate. Mr. Rogers, any final closing comments you have for us?
We at the 𝐴𝑆TT are here to help. We are here to bring the farmers together, but we cannot do it alone. We need the farmers as well to make that step. We are here to guide the farmers. We are here to support the farmers in whatever way that we can. For the government, I would like to say that we prefer a collaborative approach rather than the aggressive approach, all right, or the non-collaborative approach. The agriculture sector can bring real value to Trinidad and Tobago. It can first start with the savings of Forex and then with the earning of Forex. All we need is the support from the government. That's all we need, We need the support via policy. And once we have that, people will be surprised as to what can happen with the sector. The spin-off from the sector is huge employment opportunities, huge business opportunities, training. Now, I mean, I'm sure if you look at how much students study agribusiness management now versus 10 years ago, it's severely diminished, right? The agricultural sector holds the key to true sustainable development for any country. We are positioned in the 𝐴𝑆TT to lend support in that regard. We are here to help, we are here to serve. As an individual, I would just like to see things happen the way it should. People are there, people have a mandate. All these advisors and ministers and junior ministers and that, they have a job to do. Just do the job. Remove politics from food production. Remember what I told you all, we producing, oh, look, I have a bottle here, right? I ain't gonna show you the label because I'm not advertising my business. We produce, let me see, this amount of milk per person per year. Let that set in, right? We need to move away from that. We need to move away from that. That, by any standards, is, I mean, gosh, worse than Venezuela. Thank God we could import, but it can change. We have the people who could change it. We just need the support.
Mr. Rogers, I'd like to jump in there with you. After 8 years, the government didn't collaborate with you. You think they're going to collaborate with you now? It's time to stop playing nice. We have to bring in, we have to bring in the aggressive move now, where we mobilize and, you show a sense of unity and force. I know for a fact that these farmers are frightened because they will either buy out somebody, they will threaten somebody from the time you guys start. And I know that's what they're scared of, but we really have to come together and put an end to this. You're going to be as nice, as diplomatic as you want. This is not going anywhere. You would not get any respect. The only time you're going to get any kind of respect is when you guys start to assemble.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Start to assemble, not violently. Start to assemble outside Parliament. Start to assemble in your communities, in your various communities, and start to mobilize and just show a sense of force, meaning that you are standing together. The government, they have no respect. They don't have no respect for you because you're too small and too soft. That's how they operate. The day they're going to respect us is when we mobilize and bind together. And yes, we have to get political. And you guys better link up with Brian. I'm serious. Good night.
All right,
I
Gary.
hear
So
you.
on that note, right, I want to say it was a pleasure for me to host the first part of this series that we are calling Agriculture Now and Beyond. And we will be continuing maybe every month, every 6 weeks, but we will definitely be continuing with this series because we want to keep the issues alive until we get some sort of resolution. And there were many takeaways here tonight, but I think the one thing that I would want to leave you all with is a quote from Mr. Sinanan saying, farmers need to come together. But not just the farmers, right? We need probably a whole of society approach to dealing with some of these issues in the agricultural sector. And in whatever way our forum can assist to bring some resolution, you know, I am offering the forum as a form of assistance. So I want to thank Mr. Donnie Rogers, who is a director of the Agricultural Society of Trinidad and Tobago, and also Mr. 𝗙𝗏𝗂𝗃, Darrell 𝗙𝗏𝗃, who we lost, but Darrell is pretty much a regular on our program. He's been with us several times. He is the president of the Agricultural Society of Trinidad and Tobago, and they have graciously come onto our platform whenever we request them to come on our platform, and they share what is going on in the agricultural sector with us, right? I want to thank everybody who came and who participated, Mr. Matura, Mr. Begg, Gary, who's here with us every week. I know we had Chairman 𝗙𝗏𝗃 here. He has now gone, but certainly we did have some good contributions from the audience in terms of commentary as well as questions. So I think that is all I have left to say, apart from good night, stay safe, and we will see you all again next week, Tuesday at 8 p.m. for another episode of One on One.
Thank you for having me. Good night, everyone.
Thank you. Good night, everyone.